bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready? Break!
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good morning, Eagle Nation. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, here with you on a postseason Monday. That's right. We officially reached the postseason, and although it might not have been pretty yesterday, Johnny Mac, mission accomplished. The Eagles wanted to be the number one seed in the NFC with a 14-3 record. They have done just that. It took a little longer than Eagle Nation might have wanted it to, but the bottom line is they got the job done yesterday, right?
Yeah, that's the term I use, mission accomplished. I mean, it was ugly, no style points. You know, you can get in the weeds and complain about, the Giants didn't play anybody. That's not the Eagles' fault. Should have been easier, would have been easier, but, they dropped a lot of potential interceptions in the game. They didn't score touchdowns. They settled for Jake Elliott field goals. And the worst part was they had to play the starters for the entire game. That was the worst part. But they got out of it unscathed from an injury standpoint. So, it's one of those things. You going into the game, you probably prefer they didn't have to play him, but they played him and they got out. So that didn't jump up and bite them. And you're right. I mean, I'm kind of surprised at the panic. I mean, 14-3, this team is set up. And, I go back, Jody, you and I both thought, and I think most people thought the AFC was going to be a lot better than the NFC this season. Didn't really turn out that way through the entire season. But now as we get to the playoffs, the AFC does look a lot tougher than the NFC, mainly because of the quarterbacks. Let's be honest. They have the better quarterbacks in that conference as a whole by, I would say, a wide margin. The Eagles, man, I mean, San Francisco is playing the best football right now. There's no question in the NFC, but they still have Brock Purdy. And as well as he's playing, I don't know how you can be confident with Brock Purdy in a big situation. Now, maybe it proves me wrong, but I'm not going to be scared of him. I'm not scared of anybody, but I'm a little skittish when Patrick Mahomes is on the schedule, or Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow, or even Justin Herbert. You get a little skittish. I'm not getting skittish with Brock Purdy at Lincoln Financial Field. I'm not. I'm just not. And
you're gonna make me play devil's advocate right off the bat.
Well, you can.
The difference between Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts is that Jalen Hurts actually has a playoff loss. He has the same number of playoff wins as Brock Purdy. Purdy has been dynamite is the only way to describe it.
I know he's been dynamite, but I think it's, when we talk about coach of the year, you know how much I respect the 49ers. I picked the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. And a big reason for that is their head coach. And he's the best offensive play schemer. Andy's up there. I can't say he's better than Andy, but he's right there with Andy. He's great. Everything about Kyle Shanahan is great when it comes to scheming and play calling and things of that nature. But I'd rather have a more accomplished player at quarterback, and that's just And if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But in a larger point, because San Francisco, as I said, is playing the best football right now, no doubt about it. Everybody else in this conference,
Yeah,
I'm not. I mean, they're not coming here and winning. So, for the panic stricken, if I gave you 14-3 before the season, if I gave you records all over the place before the season, franchise records, whether it's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, sacks, Miles Sanders career year, Hassan Reddick career years all over the place, y'all would have signed up for it. So enjoy the stinking ride, man. They got to where they needed to get, the number one seed. Everything goes through Lincoln Financial Field up to the Super Bowl. And if somebody does come in and beat them, it's going to be an upset and it's going to be a disappointment.
You and I are very much on the same page, except I think you're selling Brock Purdy a little bit short.
Well, I'm the one who picked the 49ers. I love the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers, to be honest, I've been saying all year that the Eagles are the most well-rounded team. The 49ers are probably a better football team. If you put Jalen Hurts on each team and you put it in a vacuum, the 49ers are probably a better football team. But they don't. My lone concern is the health of Jalen Hurts, and that surprised me because Nick Sirianni, as you know, protects injury information like his office is in Langley, Virginia. I mean, he's misinformation, disinformation, this, that. There was no stinking chance Jalen Hurts was going to play in Dallas. There was no stinking chance he was going to play against New Orleans. The hope was they would have persevered and were able to rest Jalen Hurts until the divisional round of the playoffs. They weren't able to do that. They needed him. Sirianni admitted kind of a jaw-dropping moment for us who were around him all the time. He's hurting bad. Hopefully this week clears things up because they were limited offensively without his ability to run the football. And by ability to run the football, I mean they took it away from him because they were trying to protect him. And he was trying to protect himself, as he admitted as well. And if they don't have that element of their offense, the explosiveness is gone. It turns into a conventional, and then you're going to have to grind out wins like you grinded out against a bad football team. And the Giants, I'm not saying the Giants are a bad football team when at full strength, but the group they had out that last night was a bad football team. And Davis Webb was a really bad quarterback. And they only won 22-16.
And as bad as Davis Webb was, as you described him, he did get 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to make it interesting, and the Eagles had to survive an onside kick just to be able to put the game away. I don't know what to believe with Sirianni when it comes to the health of Jalen Hurts. I just don't know when he is in protection mode, when he's being honest mode, when he's being forthright mode, when he's being overly cautious mode, when he's being hyperbolic mode. I got no idea. I think Sirianni wants to be a straight shooter and tries to be a straight shooter, but at times I think he says things and does things for particular reasons that aren't exactly straightforward. And I'm sorry.
Well, that's fair, Jody. That's very fair because he acts like that. So it's fair to be cynical and question everything he says when it comes to injuries. But when you add what he said to what the quarterback said, and more importantly, how they played, they took that element out of their offense. They don't want to take that element out. Trust me, they don't want to take it. So that to me is the bigger point: how they played. When they stop the zone read stuff, and you take that threat of him pulling the football on the backside, things get much murkier for the Eagles offense. Much, and it took. By the way, it took Wink Martindale a while to figure it out. that, hey, he's not pulling it. We don't have to worry about that. And then all of a sudden, here comes the blitzes, hurried. He's trying to get rid of the football because he doesn't want to take hits. And it got, as I said, it got murkier. It got muddier. It got a lot more difficult. And if that's the Jalen Hurts that shows up in the divisional round, no matter who they're playing, and they could play, I think, 4 different opponents, they still should win the game, but it's going to be, forget about style points. Don't worry about style points if he's not healthy.
Limited Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship
I'm
game.
taking Jalen Hurts all day long over Brock Purdy. Now, the 49ers, that's a tough one for me. That's like choosing, that's my Sophie's choice because I picked the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. I didn't think it was going to go this way with them losing Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo and down to the 3rd-string quarterback. They are playing the best football, so I have tremendous respect for that organization. But no, I don't trust the third-string quarterback.
All right, so if you don't want to make that Sophie's choice, make this one. Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. If you're the 49ers, who you want taking you into the playoffs this year?
Well, he's played better. I mean, one of the things,
you told me last week when I told you that Gardner Minshew isn't one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league. Well, let's judge what's happened on the field. Well, guess what? Brock Purdy's had a better career than either Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo. And I know Garoppolo's got some playoff wins under his belt, but you and I got a chance to watch all those playoff wins. They weren't because of Jimmy Garoppolo. They were because of the way the 49ers played around him. I've been uber impressed by Brock Purdy. I'm sorry to say this, Eagle fans, but I'm just telling you the truth. I picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. John picked the 49ers. So we're talking about the 2 teams that we picked to be in the championship game. And sure enough, they are on a dead mission to go there because I don't like Dallas. I don't like Minnesota. I don't like New York. I don't like Seattle. I will take a little bit of a bow on the Seattle thing because other people would say, Pete Carroll, if they trade Russell Wilson, he's walking away. Pete Carroll is more into being an NFL coach than a guy 30 years younger than him, Sean McVay is, who's looking for the back door out in Los Angeles.
Yeah, he doesn't want to. He spilled Jackson that place. He doesn't want any part of a rebuild, and he's going to take a year or 2 off on TV, and he's going to pick and choose where he wants to go.
And Pete Carroll wanted nothing to do with that. And sure enough, he got his Seahawks into the playoffs. How, I'm still trying to figure out, but he did it. So give old man.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. Brian Daboll deserves a lot of credit when we talk about Coach of the Year. Nobody talks about Shanahan. I mean, to me, he should be in the conversation. Think about what he's done. And obviously Nick and Doug are a big part of that as well. I wouldn't complain about any of those, to be honest. He's done a good job. There were Daboll's done a tremendous job. There were 2 teams that I said pretty much earmarked from what their GMs were doing. One was Chicago, and they had the number 1 overall pick. So that went as expected. They were a disaster. They clearly signaled rebuild. The Giants clearly signaled rebuild. And, Brian Daboll is able to get Daniel Jones to play like an NFL quarterback. So he deserves a ton of credit. And Nick deserves a ton of credit. I mean, again, it's amazing how expectations change during the season, Jody. Again, if you said 14-3 and A.J. Brown had 1,500 receiving yards, he ended up with 1,496, and Devontae Smith set the franchise record for receptions, and they had 70 sacks. 70 sacks. Everybody would have been thrilled. And now they get here because they suffered some injuries late. Obviously, Jalen, they were 0-2 without Jalen. And now it's amazing how expectations change. But this team is 14-1 with Jalen Hurts playing quarterback. 14-1. I mean, I'm not a big wins losses stat for the quarterback, but 14-1 is 14-1.
I thought that A.J. Brown could have this kind of a season. I thought that surely thought Devontae Smith got this kind of season, and Dallas got it. I thought the offense was going to be prolific throwing the football. leading the NFL and not even close to the team that finished in second place in sacks. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. So those of you who are still trying to run Jonathan Gannon out of town,
Well, they might get their wish.
He may take a bus out of town down to Houston to take over the Texans, but you be careful what you wish for, because you may get it, because Gannon did a pretty damn good job this year as the defensive coordinator of this football team. And his whole ideology of you got to be aggressive. And God bless him. We love him here at JAKIB Media. Seth Joyner is just beating that horse to death. Oh, yeah. My God, about the aggression of the Eagles defense. All they did was come this close to setting the record for most sacks ever by any team in the history of the National Football League.
And by the way, we're going to have Paul Domowitch, and he did a stat package for this. This is the crazy part of the Eagles and their pass rush. Coming into yesterday's game, because I don't know what the Patriots did, they had 68 sacks. Number 2 was the Patriots with 52. That's number 2. Now, when you look into that further, with a 4-man rush without the blitz, the Eagles had 55. They still led. They still led over number 2. With a 4-man rush, and people are saying blitz more. Literally, Jody, every single defense, including Wink Martindale, if he could get home with 3, he would be thrilled, so he could cover with 8 people. It is the dumbest, and when I say the dumbest sentiment in the history of football, if you don't need to blitz, you don't blitz. You blitz because you have to, and you can't generate pressure. When you're 55 and number 2 is 52 with a 4-man rush, you should fire Jonathan Gannon's ass if he's blitzing all over the place like a moron. By the way, Wink Martindale, 0 blitz early in the game, 50-50 ball. A.J. Brown, 37 yards down the field. These people are amazing, Jody. Amazing.
And, oh, by the way, you talk about expectations. If I had told you told me the Eagles had all these sacks and get nothing from Jordan Davis for the season. 0 sacks, 1 tackle for a loss, played all of 8 snaps yesterday. Milton Williams is playing much better than Jordan Davis. You and I both banked on Jordan Davis being a big contributor to that Eagle defensive line. He's done nada when it comes to putting any kind of pressure on the quarterback. He is purely a run-stopping, big, sun-blocking defensive tackle. He has not advanced at all over the course of this year.
Purely, and I'm glad you added that last point, purely a run-stopping sun, whatever your description was, I like it. That's very important in this defense. I know it doesn't look like it. They didn't play a lot of 5-man fronts yesterday. Linval only played, I think, 12 snaps. They didn't play a lot of 5-man fronts because Davis Webb is Davis Webb. But it is very important for this defense to have that big run-stopping nose tackle, so you can play the 5-man fronts on early downs if you have to. If you have to. It is very, very important. And even though it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, and Linval is a big part of this as well. And Linval's actually, because of his experience, he's actually better at it right now. So I'm with you. Jordan's a little bit of a disappointment. And people are going to have this discussion for years because I said it back in April. I'm concerned he's not going to live up to expectations because people want numbers, and he's not here for numbers. He's here to do a specific role, and it helps open things up for everybody else. And I know people don't see it, but it is really, really important to this defense. And the coordinator himself has stressed that to me on multiple occasions. It is really, 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 really important for this defense.
Yeah, I'm going to call the.
I mean, this is before.
Only good enough to get on the field for 8 snaps in a must-win game. I don't know how you can look someone in the eye and go, really, really, really important. If you're really important, you got to play more than 8 snaps in a must-win game.
Jody, the difference is they barely played the 5-man fronts yesterday because they didn't have to. Now, if they go against the 49ers, who have the most inventive running scheme in the history of the world, and I'm exaggerating, but Kyle's really good at it, they're going to need the 5-man stick in fronts, and you're going to see something different. When Davis Webb is out there, you don't need to play 5-man fronts. He's incapable of doing anything.
They will be in fear of Brock Purdy, but not Davis Webb.
They are not in fear of Brock Purdy. They are in fear
you just said they weren't in fear yesterday of Davis Webb, but for San Francisco, I'm assuming San Francisco is going to be quarterbacked by Brock Purdy if they get him in the playoffs, right? Did you
miss the running game? If Saquon Barkley was out there, I don't even have to go to San Francisco. If Saquon Barkley was out there, they would have had to play more 5-man fronts. They weren't concerned.
You said Davis Webb. Now, which is it? Are you setting your defense as per the other team's quarterback or the other team's running game?
The running game.
Then why did you bring up Davis Webb as the quarterback of the Giants?
Because Davis Webb. Okay, I should have said Davis Webb and Matt Breida and Gary Barnwell or whoever the hell the third-string running back. I should have said all of them together. It was a joke what the Giants put out on the field. They weren't concerned with the running game. The running game. The running game. Let me say it a 15th time. The running game. If Saquon Barkley's out there, if San Francisco with their impressive running game is out there, Linval Joseph is going to be more important. I'll even take Jordan Davis out of the equation. Linval Joseph is going to be more important because the Eagles need to play more 5-man fronts.
All right. I would have been more afraid of the Giants running game yesterday than their passing game with the quarterback they had in there. That's just me. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We have the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We will be joined by Paul Domowitch next. He's going to jump in and tell us where the Eagles sit as we head into the playoffs. 14-3, 14-3. But does the fact that they kind of struggled down this stretch erode your confidence level to the Birds coming into the postseason? You got some of John's opinions, some of my opinions. We'll get Paul Domowich's opinion next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
A playoff Monday. That's where the Eagles are headed, folks. Here on Birds 365, Jody McDonald and John McMullen, joined by our bud from the 33rd team and his stat package here on JAKIBSports.com, Mr. Paul Domowitch. Damo, after yesterday's game, your first emotion was when the Eagles and Mr. Blankenship fell on that onside kick, which now I'm getting off 10. Do you guys get nervous when guys touch the ball before 10 yards? I always do. Yeah, that's like the worst thing I want to see if I'm open a fall on the don't touch it. Wait, let it go 10 yards because then it becomes a live ball.
I love the
away.
confidence of when I see a player with the confidence of Reed Blankenship go get that football. I love it.
Yeah,
that's what you want.
It makes me friggin' nervous. I'm sorry. And nice play, Reed. But as soon as he fell on it, Damo, what was your first immediate emotion?
I wouldn't say relief because I never thought they were going to lose the game. I never thought it was in jeopardy. I don't know, move on. I mean, it was they had to get the job done. They didn't, it didn't look good, but they did what they had to do.
Yeah, I mean, the worst part for me, Damo, is they had to play the starters the whole game. I mean, but they got out of it. They got out of it. Nobody seemed to be banged up. It was good to see CJ out there, and they used him in they used him in the Monte Maddox. He was playing safety and nickel corner. So that was, I think, going to be very helpful. But, I mean, let's be honest. It was pretty clear after the game. They didn't want to play Jalen Hurts in this game. They felt they had to. Obviously, the original plan was wait to the divisional round. He was not healthy. So they're more limited when you take away the running part of the game. And they took away the zone read stuff, essentially. So can he get better in 2 weeks?
I think Nick went into that game hoping he would have to, they would take charge early. By halftime, all of his starters would be out of there. That didn't happen. It was never comfortable enough where he felt he could do that without having to possibly reverse field later on, and he didn't want to do that. But, I mean, his worst fear was like Hassan Reddick getting a hamstring or somebody else getting hurt. Like you said, you don't want to be playing your starters in this game. They were forced to. All you wanted to do was get the win and get out of there without any injuries, and they accomplished those two things.
Damo, the thing that concerned me the most after the game is over and done with, and it's always 20/20 hindsight, but in actuality, as they were kicking field goal after field goal after field goal after field goal, I was starting to go, what the hell is going on here? Was their inability in their own end to make a big play and get into the end zone. Is it as easy as Jalen just wasn't Jalen? The fact that Miles isn't quite 100% yet either. We know Lane Johnson's out of the lineup. Why do you think they fell as short and putting touchdowns on the board as they did?
Well, it all comes down offensively to the fact that the Giants knew Jalen was not going to run the ball. I mean, if you look at the Eagles are the number one ranked have been the number one ranked red zone offense in the NFL this season, not because of anything he's done with throwing the ball in the red zone, but because of his running and Miles' running inside the 20. You take that away, it's night and day difference. That's, and they knew that, and it made it much easier to defend the Eagles. And so that's kind of why they went 1 for 5 in the red zone. I don't think you're going to see that happen in the playoffs because they're going to, the training wheel, not the training wheels, but Jalen will be able to run in the playoffs regardless because of this, the importance of the game, no matter how he feels. So that when I look at their performance offensively yesterday, I look at the fact that he couldn't run, and that contributed to everything else.
I asked Nick that after the game because I was kind of surprised he wanted to protect Jalen. Obviously, he didn't play his best game, but he get mission accomplished. And he said, well, I think he played well. We just didn't do what we typically did in the red zone. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, exactly what you said, Tom. You didn't do well in the red zone because the zone read stuff is off the table. The threat of him pulling the football is off the table.
Right.
And he did kind of admit, yeah, that was part of it. That was all of it, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he had his first red zone interception, which was a bad throw. But aside from that, the fact that they knew he wasn't going to run and the fact that he did not run because he didn't want to get hurt was everything.
Yeah. Now, last season, I'm not comparing the situations because the Eagles were the 7th seed. Tampa Bay was a much better team. But Jalen was limited. Different injury, but he was limited with the ankle. After the game, he had to have surgery. It didn't come back. I mean, he was limited. So while I hear your thought that they're going to let him be Jalen Hurts in the playoffs, is that necessarily the case? If he can't be, is it more like last year and it becomes more of a pocket-based offense? And it becomes more of a pocket-based offense, things get a lot muddier. The Eagles should still be able to win these games, but probably style points are out the window at that point.
Yeah. Well, one thing yesterday, I mean, I didn't think their offensive line played one of their better games. I mean, the backups for the Giants, I thought, might have won that battle in the trenches, which is not if I'm Jason Kelsey and the rest of that offensive line, I'm not happy with the way I played because they did not protect him particularly well in the pocket. I think Jalen is capable of finding a middle ground run-wise. You look at the Chicago game, he did whatever it took. And that involved a lot of runs where he knew he was going to get hammered. I think you can go find some place between that game and yesterday where he's running, but he's also sliding, getting out of bounds, not exposing his body to injury as much as he did in some of the games this year. So I think if he's still not 100% in 2 weeks, I think you can take that approach.
And by the way, in that playoff game last year, Jalen Hurts was still their leading rusher in both number of carries and number of yards, because before you blink, they were down 14-0. So guess what? He's going to drop back and throw it 40 some odd times. So I don't know that I will use last year's playoff game as a barometer to judge how he's going to handle it.
Jody, he had 3 rushing first downs yesterday. I mean, including the quarterback's sneak, which kind of surprised me. I mean, that was I
was surprised they pulled that out because they didn't use it early in the game, and then they used it later. I was a little surprised by that. Yeah.
All I can figure is Jalen said, they're not going to hurt the shoulder. Let's do it and let's get the first down. I mean, because I was really surprised by that.
All right, so they beat up enough on Giants B team. They get the week off. How important is that on 2 fronts? Number one, healing for Jalen Hurts, and maybe even more importantly for Lane Johnson, any other guys who are nicked up along the line. And number 2, just to get a mindset going, because they have this unbelievable run, 13-1, snuck by the Bears, got beat by the Cowboys, lost to the Saints, just about beat the Giants B team. They got 2 weeks to get their head together. You got confidence Nick Sirianni can pull that off?
Yeah, I mean, I still think this is a team that's going to probably make it to the NFC Championship game and play San Francisco. I go back to 2017, Jody. Everybody gave up on this team after Carson went down. You look at those last 3 games that Nick Foles started in, or 2 actually, because he didn't. They benched their starters in that last regular season game against Dallas, that 6-0 game. But he didn't play particularly well against Oakland, against the Giants in those 2 warm-up games for the playoffs. Nobody had any confidence going into the playoffs that this was a team that was going to catch fire and run away with the Super Bowl. And they did. So you never know. I mean, it's all about lightning in a bottle in this league. The thing that,
by the way, Tomo, he wasn't good against Atlanta in the divisional round. They kind of sneaked that one. Then he just went nuts against Minnesota and continued against New England. So
Who was the wide receiver that should have had a touchdown for Atlanta?
Julio Jones.
That's Julio Jones blowing off his hands.
And then you had Keanu Neal at the end of the first half. Yeah, I mean,
that's
kind of
one of those, is this destiny type of things, or fate and things like that happen. But I think Jalen's going to be fine. I mean, I think 2 more weeks of rest his shoulder will be well enough that he's going to be able to play and not risk getting debilitated. The guy that concerns me is going through the playoffs is the fact that I don't know how effective Lane Johnson's going to be. I've always had confidence in Jack Driscoll. In the last 2 games, I don't know. He's certainly not Lane Johnson. And Lane, you're going to be facing premier competition in the playoffs that's going to find ways to exploit your weaknesses. Lane's going to play. The question from talking to doctors is how effective is he going to be? We've seen players play with a sports hernia. Some, I referenced back last week when I wrote a story to Brent Selleck. We didn't even know in 2011 that he had a sports hernia and a torn hip. Anyway, his hip was also injured. Nobody knew it. He was on the injury report like twice the entire year. Had numbers that were among the best of his career. But there are other, he wasn't having to.
Nate Gary played with a core sports hernia, the entire season. And I remember Ken Plagiol told me, because I always wondered, why the heck did Jim Schwartz and Ken Plagiol like Nate Gary so much? And because the fan base couldn't stand him. And he played through that injury, was never on the injury report, and they just had a ton of respect for him. And that is not easy to play through those core muscles.
And there may not be a more difficult position to play with that type of injury than the offensive line, especially a tackle, because he's going to be limited in being able to move laterally. I'm sure. Lane's is tough. One of the toughest guys I've ever covered in this league.
Oh yeah.
Whatever can be taken legally to help him deal with the pain, you can bet it's going to be in his body. Still, it's going to be. That's a key. When you're looking at things to watch, that's a key. How effective will Lane be in the playoffs?
Well, let me talk about that offensive line, Tomo, because you bring up and from last night's game, even though the Giants aren't playing anybody and nobody's out there, and Thibodeau's not out there, and Ojulari's not out there, they're a pain in the ass because of Wink, and he's just blitzing from the bus. You don't see that every week. So it seems to me like if you're playing the Giants, at times your offensive line is going to look bad because they're sending 100 rushers every stinking play. And but you get a lot of big plays on the back end, typically. Now, to me, the problem is the Eagles had one. Well, they had two. They had 2 30-yard receptions to A.J. Brown. They didn't have the explosive plays off the blitz that they typically would have. But does that temper your worry a little bit with the offensive line? Because you're not going to see that. Well, you might see the Giants again because they might upset Minnesota. But other teams don't do this. They don't do this, especially in this era. Yeah,
I think they may end up playing them again because I think the Giants have a good chance of beating Minnesota.
Yeah, so do I.
I'm a big Vikings fan. They've 11 wins, 1-score wins. Mostly against losing teams.
They are the bizarre. They're 13-4, and they have a negative point differential because when they lose, they get destroyed. It's the most bizarre thing. But I'm with you. They have a chance.
And I tweeted this yesterday. When Minshew started the 2 games, he relied on Kenny Gainwell. 6 targets, 6 catches, almost 10 yards a catch. I don't know if it's by design or just it's not in Jalen's makeup. He doesn't really use his backs much in the passing game. And if you're playing a blitzing team like the Giants, it's weapon number 1. Just dump it off to Gainwell. And they don't do that a lot. They didn't do it like yesterday. So, I mean, that's something I would think about going forward if they did play the Giants again. I mean, I think they'll find a recipe for beating, his blitzes. But, yeah, it gave him problems yesterday.
And, oh, by the way, that's not impossible. Giants, Minnesota next week, to me, is a toss-up game. And if the Giants win, there's a very good chance they're coming right back here to Lincoln Financial Field in a couple of weeks. All right, you guys are more in the trenches than I am. You're Dama, you were certainly there in 2017 on a day-in, day-out basis. We've already referenced the Super Bowl. What did Eagles do for this week? I just said, don't be surprised if it's the Giants. Or it could be someone else, or it could be someone. We just know it's not going to be the Vikings or the 49ers, but it could be any of the other 4 teams. You don't know who you're going to play yet. How do you prepare this week? Just general practice, just general tendencies. How do you handle this week? It's the only week all season that you could be playing someone that you don't know who it is. You got an entire week to prepare for. I got no idea who it is. How do you do that if you're the Eagles?
Well, first thing you do, and I'm guessing Nick's going to give them a couple days off.
They'll probably be in Wednesday, Thursday, have off the weekend.
So I mean, they're helped by the fact that 2 of the teams in the playoffs, besides them, 2 of the other 6 teams are in their division. So they're certainly, they're deep in scouting information on those 2 teams. They played Tampa Bay last year. Nothing's changed there. So, I mean, they just need to – I think we're going to hear a lot about the underdog thing this year. They're going to find out. They're going to go and see every bad thing that's been written about them since in the last 2 weeks.
I'm amazed that they could sell they're the underdogs. They're going to be significant favorites against everybody.
Well, they did it.
I know. It's amazing.
And they'll do it now because it's a very effective tool.
If it works, use it.
You want to be just.
But hold on. They could legitimately do it. They were underdog all 3 games in 2017. They were underdog to the Falcons. They were underdog to the Vikings. Now you can just say, what the frig does Vegas know? But they were actual underdogs. Did they overplay it and overstate it? Of course they did, because that's what you do. But it wasn't like they made it up out of whole cloth. If they do it this year, they're going to be making it up out of whole cloth.
No, it was literally, in a literal sense, it was correct in 2017. But they played it up, and Doug, to his credit, played it up like disrespect, and nobody believes it. Everybody knew they were in a good team. Everybody knew they were the best team. They just saw them lose their MVP-style quarterback, and they made a common-sense decision. Oh, they're screwed. They lost their quarterback. And Nick Foles comes in, there's Damo explained, and played like people forget, played like crap when he first came into the game. And they said, oh, and by the way, the Eagles were in that equation as well. They thought it was like a wake. Remember the day after Damo at the NovaCare complex? It was like a wake. They thought it was over. So but my only point about 2017 is, yes, they were literally underdogs because nobody believed in Nick Foles. But everybody knew that was a really good team. Nobody disrespected. They would have been significant favorites over Atlanta with Carson Wentz. Significant favorites over Minnesota with Carson Wentz at home. They probably would have been underdogs in the Super Bowl because it's Brady and Belichick. But that's my only point. This time, though, I mean, they're not. I joked because Jason Kelsey started his clothing line, Underdogs clothing line, and Nick showed up. Of course, Nick showed up in the shirt, and I said, "What do you wear? Your favorite every game? What are you wearing that shirt for?" I asked him that, and he's like, "Always underdogs." That's just the belief.
Yeah,
and they're never underdogs.
If it's not real,
yeah.
We'll see if they play attempt to play the underdog card again this year. At earliest, I think it would be the Super Bowl. But that's just me. All right. So the fact that San Francisco and the Eagles, for me, have separated themselves out of those other teams, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Vikings, if you want to put Seattle in there, and God bless Pete Carroll, I tip my hat to him today that he got him in there. But I have no fear of them whatsoever. If I tell you one of those other four are certainly a team that the Eagles could face next week in that first game, which one do you give the most respect to, Damo? Who do you say, all right, well, now the Eagles better hunker down because this team isn't just going to come in here and lay down for the Eagles?
Well, I mean, I think a team that I would not forget about are the Bucs. I mean, Tom Brady, I mean, I know that they played like crap. His numbers are as bad as they've been his entire career. Not a horrible overall, but I mean, the poorest of his great career. And yet you put him on the field against another team and you just don't know. He could catch fire and suddenly you're out of the playoffs. So that would concern me. Dallas, I don't know. At one point I thought they were the best team in the NFC. And, I mean, Dak Prescott is just playing, he's got more red zone interceptions than any quarterback in the league.
I think he led the league in interceptions and he missed 5 games or whatever.
I mean, he's just not the same quarterback. I don't know if it's because of those games he missed. So their defense isn't as great as it was at one point. So I don't think that's a team that's going to, go the distance. But I mean, right now, if you ask me who I'd worry about besides San Francisco, it would be Tampa Bay.
I would still go Dallas simply because, and I don't know what happened yesterday because I was watching the Eagles game, unfortunately, and watching the Giants joke of a roster. But obviously they played poorly. But if they play a clean game on a particular day, they have the talent to win. Now, but that's like the mentality. If they bring their A game and you bring their C game, they might be a problem. So I would still say from that perspective, because the Giants can't beat the Eagles, period. End of sentence. The Seahawks can't beat the Eagles. Minnesota, Jefferson could go off. You're a little bit of concern because they might win a 40-38 game, but never in Philadelphia. They're not. That dome team is not coming to Philadelphia. Yeah. To me, it would have to be Dallas because Tampa Bay is just, they're not good except for Tom.
Yeah, but here's the problem. I saw the stat this morning. I couldn't believe I didn't know it. Tom Brady's record against Dallas career, what do you think it is?
Well, pretty good. It's pretty good against everybody.
Right.
Wasn't it?
Specifically against the Cowboys. You want to take a guess at a number?
7-1.
Close. Only you got the second number wrong. 7-0. Yeah. He's never lost to the Cow. 7 starts against Dallas. Now he's part of that great Patriots dynasty. He didn't play the Cowboys all that. But 7-0 is 7-0. That kind of jumps off the page when you've never lost to a team in 7 matchups.
I feel like Tom Brady's 7-0 against everybody. Except divisional.
Except for the Eagles and the Giants, because we know we lost a couple of games to them. Big games at the end of the year. It's going to sound like I'm a Dak Prescott apologist, and I don't want to be, but with the fact that we dealt with this with Gardner Minshew on the Quez Watkins interceptions, a lot of people laid it all at Quez's door. You got to be able to pull that ball out. Quez is such a lightweight. How does he not come away with that ball? The quarterback decided to throw it to a undersized guy in the middle of the field. I put just as much weight on Gardner Minshew for those INTs as Quez, rather than just drop it all on Quez, who doesn't fight for the football back.
I didn't drop it all. I said like 80-20. 80-20.
I was more like a 50-50 guy. And I'll say the same thing about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys wide receivers. They don't fight for the football. Even CD Lamb, who is tremendously talented and has unbelievable skills and runs routes and great hair, he doesn't fight for the football when it's up for grabs. Their tight end, Schultz, doesn't fight the way that Goddard fights for a football. Whoever else is their other wide receiver, T.Y. Hilton got behind the defense, but that was a misjudged play, not a great fighting play by him. They kind of hang their quarterback out to dry, the Cowboys wide receivers. And, by the way, Dak, much like Gardner Minshew, will just put it up there and go get it for me, big guy. And then when they don't, guess what? Guess who gets the INT? Dak, you. The Cowboys receiving crew does not scare me if they come in here to Philadelphia. Does it you, Dama?
CD Lamb does.
CD Lamb.
You know, he and Gallup can get hot. You know, and the thing about CD Lamb, you're right about. I mean, he's not a 50-50 ball guy. Either is Quez Watkins. But if you're a quarterback, you're supposed to be. You play to your receivers' strengths and avoid their weaknesses. So you don't throw 50-50 balls to Watkins. And
that's very fair.
CD Lamb is right now one of the. I mean,
he's great. He's great.
Yeah, he's one of the most effective receivers in the league right now. He's probably going to be a second-team All-Pro. So I mean, he's broken out. I mean, he's finally gotten to that top echelon, and he'd scare me in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Dallas is talented. So anytime you have a bunch of talented players, and even if they underachieve or people perceive they underachieve, it's only one game. It's only 60 minutes. And if they show up that one day with that talent, they could be a problem. As opposed to those other teams, I just don't think they have the talent to beat the Eagles. And so to me, obviously it's Eagles, San Francisco 1-2, or however you want to place them. But if there's another team that could get hot like the Eagles did in 2017, I think it's Dallas.
Yeah. I mean, another guy besides Lamb that scares me on that team against the Eagles because of their situation right now at right tackle would be Micah Parsons. They found, I mean, Lane Johnson was able to deal with him when he was healthy. They would have to give him help because they would stick Micah Parsons on that end all day and have him rushing every pass drop back. So suddenly you'd be playing a lot more 12 than Nick wants to. And it just alters your strategy. So, yeah, I mean, if they play up to their capabilities, I agree with you, John. I just don't know what to make of Dallas right now because they play down to their talent more so than they do play up to it.
Yeah, down to Sam Howell, by the way. I don't know how they lost that game, but they lost it.
Well, I've had Kratz on later in the week, and he'll be singing the praises of Sam Howell. I did get to watch a little of that Dallas. I jumped over to Dallas and the Washington game yesterday. Noah Brown, 6 targets, 1 reception. Michael Gallup, 6 targets, 1 reception. That's bad numbers. That's just bad. I'm telling you, those guys don't fight for the football. If our superstar cornerback, big play Slay, can handle, can even go 50-50 against CD Lamb, the Cowboys are not coming into Philadelphia and beating the Eagles. All right, so let me get you guys' opinions on it this way. Assuming the Eagles are a significant favorite against anyone other than San Francisco. Put San Francisco aside. If they play them, they won't play them till the championship game. We know that because they're the 1 and the 2 seed. Who do you want to play just because you want to beat them? That if you're an Eagle fan, not the handicap best matchup, let's break this down, our strength against their strength. No, just I believe we're better, so I want to stick it in their eye. Who do you want coming to the link for?
That's I'll let Damo go, but that's a tough one for me because I don't care. But I'll phrase it in a different way.
You're talking about going an NFC team that they would play.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for fans, I mean that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, for
fans, they want a piece of the Cowboys. Yeah. I mean, it would be the 1980 NFC Championship game all over again. I mean that's their dream to dispose of the Cowboys along the way to the Super Bowl.
I would want, if I were a fan, I'd look at it differently. I'd say, which team are they going to beat hands down, no questions asked? And I would say the Giants. I mean, the Giants can't beat the Eagles. Full strength, they can't. They haven't beaten them since 2006, I think. They lost to them 48-22 at MetLife when they were, at full strength. They can't beat them. They can't beat them. So I would say the Giants again.
The great equalizer, regardless of who they play in the playoffs, is turnovers, and that they're not doing very well right. In last 9 games, their turnover differential after the first 8 games, it was plus 15. I mean, they weren't giving it away. They were taking it away from everybody. Last 9 games, it's -7. So, I mean, that's a concern.
Chauncey's back, though. Chauncey's back.
Chauncey was back, but again, they didn't get any interceptions.
Oh, yeah.
That was right. You just want to look at the numbers.
I'm more concerned about the giveaways by the offense, and not so much Jalen, but even you look at where they have Miles run now. I think they think about it sometimes. They're not giving him the ball down their own end of the field. They use Boston Scott or Gainwell then.
He's hurt now, Domo. He's legit hurt. He's playing. Yeah. He's got a bad knee, so they're limiting him from a touch standpoint.
And that's the best place to limit him.
Yeah.
And thank God they did what they did yesterday, because the only bet I got right all day was Boston Scott anytime touchdown.
Oh yeah, that's the easiest bet in the world.
Man, that was easy.
Bet in the world.
Couldn't believe I got 3-1 on that.
That's exact. Boston Scott, and do it again if the Giants come back for the playoffs. Prop Boston Scott.
He's guaranteed to get a touchdown against the Giants. All right, one last question, following up on your turnover thing. Opinion from both of you. How much did they miss Josh Sweat yesterday?
I don't think they missed anybody because the Giants didn't play anybody. But to your larger point, they missed Josh Sweat.
If the Giants were that bad, they're putting that bad a B team out there. Why didn't the Eagles win 45?
Well, they should have. If they intercepted, they dropped 3 interceptions. It was 19-0. If they had the 3 interceptions Davis Webb was trying to give them, Slay missed a pick 6. I mean, he was gone. It went right through his hands. Marcus Epps dropped an easy interception. TJ Edwards a little bit more difficult, but he had both hands on the football. They should have been up 30-0, and it would have been. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. But to your larger point, Josh Sweat's a really good player. They're going to miss him. They're going to miss him if he can't play. And I don't know if he can't play. He might be back.
I mean, I was surprised a little bit yesterday by the lack of pressure they put on Webb at times. I don't know how much of it was strategic. I mean, they just didn't. I don't think they want. Ironically, that touchdown was the biggest damn lane I've ever seen a quarterback.
That was a heck of a. He ran over Reed Blankenship. I give him credit for that.
Yeah, but he didn't. There was nobody within a mile of him until he got to Reed Blankenship.
Yeah,
but so I don't. I'm gonna give him a pass yesterday. They had been playing. They had been. They had been getting pressure on quarterbacks the last 2 weeks without Sweat. So I think they can survive without him. But you're a better team with him. So. It's going to be an interesting situation whether he's able to come back.
Yeah, Reed Blankenship praying the somehow tape stopped right before that play. So that one's on tape, Reed, and they're going to be showing that over and over and over again. That was not a good look for the Eagles safety. Always a good look when you join us, Damo. Thank you very much for doing so. We're going to have you on during the playoffs as well. Appreciate it, bud.
Thanks,
guys. Take care.
Paul Domowitch, the 33team.com, and he gives you a great stat package leading to Eagles games, and he will do so for us in the playoffs as well. Who will the Eagles be playing in the playoffs? Yeah, maybe I'll make Johnny Mac speculate on the first round of play. Since it's all laid out, we know who's playing who and where and when. If we can pick the 3 winners in the NFC, we can lay out the next round of the playoffs, which will include the hometown Birds. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. You got Mac and Mac here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know how Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
It is the Back to Back Birds 365 Playoff Monday episode. We know the Eagles will be hosting who to be determined. Not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after. Don't know what time the game is. More importantly, we don't know who the game will be against. We know the NFC playoff matchups. One Saturday, one Sunday, and the Monday nighter is an NFC game. So, Johnny, just let me get your thoughts on these. We've got 7 days to figure this out, but we'll start today. The Seahawks end up making the playoffs. The Lions rallied, beat the Packers last night. In watching that Packer game, I was thinking much like the Eagle game. Aaron Rodgers, can you get a touchdown? Just kept going down the field and settling for field goals, settling for field goals, settling for field goals. And sure enough, the Lions stuck them late to get the Seahawks in the playoffs. They're at the 49ers in the early Saturday game. The Sunday NFC game is the Vikings and the Giants, and then Monday night is Bucs and Cowboys. First and foremost, Seahawks and the 49ers. Is that going to be ugly, Johnny, man?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty easy for the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers, we talked about it. They're playing great football. Seattle's tremendous story. Geno's a tremendous story. What a season he's had. But yeah, it ends for the Seahawks against the 49ers. That to me is the clearest cut wild card game, probably, is that one for me.
And as John stated earlier, he didn't have a great feel on a couple of the other 4 o'clock games because, he was at the Eagle game. He's paying attention to the Eagle game, so he couldn't get into the weeds on those other games. I was lucky enough to be home to be able to flip over and catch some of it. Oh, by the way, the rich getting richer. Elijah Mitchell back in for the 49ers yesterday, which just gives him another weapon out of the backfield, which is Shanahan's forte.
And that, when you think about Kyle Shanahan and you think about the type of player Christian McCaffrey is, and, if he's healthy, and then Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I mean, man, they're a pain in the ass to deal with. They really are.
I think that is one of the undersold stories as we head into the playoffs. how big a difference Christian McCaffrey was. And at the time when they made the deal, they didn't know they were going to be out without Mitchell that entire time. And McCaffrey stepped in, and it seemed like he's been playing for the 49ers for 8 years. And he came in and was just a perfect fit for them. So, yeah, I think San Francisco wins handily. The Viking-Giant game is interesting because if there are two teams in the NFC that a lot of people, my partner included, have just continued to say, yeah, but it's been the Giants and the Vikings. The Vikings are 13-4. Yeah, but they've got a minus point differential. How the hell are you 13-4 with a minus point differential? When they lose, they get crushed. When they win by the skin of their teeth. And the Giants, to both John and my seeing, I'm not even sure how they got to where they are right now.
It wouldn't shock me if the Giants won this game at all. I mean, I'm probably going to pick Minnesota. They're the better team. They have the better players. They're at home. But they just played recently, a couple weeks ago in Minnesota. Minnesota needed a 61-yard field goal from a bad field goal kicker. So that's kind of, when you talk about things breaking your way during a particular season. I don't like, they're a big play team, right? Minnesota offensively. And I just talked about it with Wink Martindale against the Eagles. He's going to give you an opportunity to make big plays. And, Kirk Cousins is smart enough to just throw it up to Justin Jefferson. And if he's going to leave Justin Jefferson in single coverage, that's how the Giants are going to lose the game. They're going to blitz too much and they're going to get gashed.
And Minnesota was 8-1 at home this year. So that is a significant advantage that the game is going to be played in Minnesota. And then we were talking with Tom a little earlier about the Eagles and the underdog card that they played back in 2017. Was it legit? Wasn't it? Bill Vegas said it was, but it was tremendously overstated by the Eagles and some of their players and some of the media members here in town. If I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you bet your ass I'm playing the underdog card this week. They're home. They've got the GOAT as the quarterback. They played the Cowboys previously this year and won. And somehow they're an underdog in this game against Dallas. Dallas comes in as a 3-point favorite in this game. Now, I know the Bucs are a divisional winner with a losing record. The Cowboys had a regular season record. But the Bucs still have Tom Brady. And I gave you the stat that I saw this morning that I was unaware of, but now I'll be beating it to death all week. Tom Brady is 7-0 lifetime against the Dallas Cowboys. And I know the fact that he beat them in 2003, am I just making this up? I don't even know if he did or didn't play him in 2003, but he might have played him 19 years ago for the first time. And a win against that Dallas Cowboy team with that Patriot team has no effect on what's going to happen in the 2023 playoffs. But 7-0 is 7-0. And the Bucs are an underdog in this game at home, their house. Do you think they can play that to a good enough effect?
Well, I'm sure they'll play it. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll play it, but they're an underdog for good reason. And if the Cowboys lose that game, even in being on the road, even it being against Tom Brady, they should be wildly disappointed. I mean, they're the significantly better football team. Now, this is coming off where they just played on the road against a rookie quarterback starting his first game, and they weren't even close. So they need to figure it out. They need to figure it out quickly. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if Tampa Bay won the game. I wouldn't be, awestruck, but the Cowboys should win the game. They're the better team. But the better team doesn't always win. I would pick the Cowboys in that game. I think they'll correct it. I think in a lot of ways, that tends to happen in the NFL when you play really, really poorly. You bounce back a little bit the next week, or a little bit more focused. But, our buddy John McMullen, who we have on the show every time the Eagles play the Cowboys, he's nice enough to come on. He just put something up this morning. The Cowboys have been very bad in grass. And the theory is on grass. And the theory is it slows down their pass rush, which is the biggest strength of their team. And they're not the same as they are on the so-called fast turf at home at AT&T Stadium. Similar to what makes Minnesota good, right? 8-1, as you mentioned, in that stadium. And then they get on the road like Green Bay a couple of weeks ago, and they're all sliding around. They're not wearing the right cleats. The players don't want to wear the 7 studs. I saw that story, and they look like the Keystone Cops. So, Tampa Bay's got a chance, but talent-wise, they're up against it.
That matchup, Cowboys versus Bucks. If I tell you that it comes down to which of the 2 head coaches does a better job that day, who are you going with?
Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy. It gets so much crap. I've said it before. People probably hate. I said a couple weeks ago on this show that Dallas has one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL. One of the best coaching staffs in the NFL. They have a tremendous defensive coordinator. They have a tremendous offensive coordinator. They have a tremendous special teams coordinator. Every single one of them would be top 5, I think, in this league. Every single coordinator. And Mike McCarthy gets shat upon. And great. I mean, he won a lot of games in Green Bay. And a lot of that had to do with Aaron Rodgers. It's easy to win games when you have Hall of Fame quarterback play. But he's won a lot of games in the NFL. He's put together this great staff. I think a lot of criticism he receives is unjustified. But if you lose in the first round of the playoffs as favorites, time and time again, you're gonna get some criticism.
Right, and that's why I asked the question the way I asked it. I didn't ask you who has the better coaching staff. I asked you if it comes down to a head coach matchup in game during that day, who do you like better? Now, truth be told, I'm still taking McCarthy because I'm not a fan of the Buccaneers head coach.
Yeah,
don't take that as I have faith in Mike McCarthy type stance. I don't. I think it's 2 below average head coaches. Now, you want to give McCarthy credit for putting that staff together, and I agree with you. It is a very good top to bottom staff. Then that goes into the overall evaluation of Mike McCarthy as a head coach. But I'm talking about in-game decisions to be made on the fly. I don't love either of the coaches in that matchup.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Mike. Todd, I know, is a former Jet head coach. I know you haven't been high on him. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's, any great shakes. I never said, "Ooh, Todd Bowles is a great coach." I don't think he's a disaster.
Here's how I'll make my point to you, John. 7 teams in the NFC this year made the playoffs. How are you ranking the 7 head coaches? Who's the best head coach in the NFC in the postseason?
Let me. So we got Nick. I got to do this in my head real quick. We got Kyle. We got Mike McCarthy. We got Kevin O'Connell, Pete Carroll, Todd Bowles, and who am I missing? Who's
Brian
the 7?
Daboll.
Brian Daboll.
Give me 6 and 7. Go ahead, please. Give me 6 and 7 out of those 7 coaches.
Well, Todd's definitely. I'm trying to think if there's anybody. I'm not in love with Kevin O'Connell, even with the wins. To me, the blowouts kind of expose him. Like he doesn't. I think he wins because of the players. I'm not in love with him, but I understand why nobody would rate after winning 13 games. Nobody's going to rate Todd Bowles ahead of Kevin O'Connell. So I get where you're going. But yeah, Nick's a good coach. Kyle's a great coach. Brian Daboll looks like he's going to be a really good coach. Pete Carroll's a great coach. Yeah, Mike McCarthy's
6 and 7. Mike McCarthy, Todd Bowles. Out of the 7 teams in the playoffs, they're last and next to last.
I would put Mike ahead of Kevin O'Connell easily.
Yeah, I'm not going there because McCarthy has had he certainly has a much bigger resume. Been doing it a hell of a lot longer, but he's also had more disappointment. Kevin O'Connell hasn't had a disappointment yet.
Well, he'll be lucky if he gets that many disappointments. Let's put it that way.
If you're saying sticking around gets you style points, okay. Mike McCarthy has done that. But I will say this about Jerry Jones, and we got Chris Franklin joining us in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned for that. One of the false narratives around the NFL is reactive owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones may have stuck with his head coach more often in years where I thought he was actually going to fire him than any owner in the NFL. I thought for sure Jason Garrett was done about 3 times before he actually pulled the plug on him. I thought he was out the door.
Yeah, well, he should have been. Yeah, but Jerry's kind of loyal. Yeah, actually,
he really is. Yeah. And people paint him as this guy who's this. I know better than anybody else. Shoot from the hip, wild man down there in Texas. He really isn't. He does stick with it, specifically head coaches. He does give his head coaches more rope.
Yeah, I think the only problem, if you go back to Bill Parcells. The only problem with
Parcells fired himself, by the way. Jerry Jones didn't fire Parcells.
Well,
Parcells fired himself.
And even before that, Jimmy Johnson. If you're going to be Jerry's head coach, you have to deal with the fact that he's always going to talk. Like a lot of coaches, like Bill Parcells isn't going to accept that. He doesn't want to hear from the stupid owner, and correctly so. But there are a lot of coaches who will go, all right, he's going to do his radio show. He's going to say what he's going to say. And you got to have the personality to deal with it. Some guys don't have the personality to deal with
it. And to McCarthy's credit, the last couple of years, because it has not ended well for the Cowboys, he's played his cards correctly if he wanted to stay the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, depending on how the game goes, he loses Sunday as a favorite. And Tom Brady gets to stick in Jerry Jones.
And if Sean Payton, a lot of people have speculated because Sean lives in the area. A lot of people have put those two things together for a very, very long time, before this. He's the guy, right? Denver's already trying. He's going to be first on everybody's list. And if you can't get Sean Payton, then you're going to go to second, third. If they lose in the first round and Sean Payton says, all right, I'm coming in, I could see him moving on. I don't think he would move on for anybody else, in other words, because he wants, Dan Quinn might get a head coaching job. I don't know how many are going to be open. Already Houston's open, so add another one. What a joke that organization is, by the way. I don't know how many are going to be open, but Dan's going to be on a lot of lists. Kellen Moore's going to be on lists. Bossel, the special teams coordinator, is going to get a head coach, but they don't want to lose these guys. They don't want to lose those coordinators. And the easiest way not to lose those coordinators is to keep the head coach.
Yeah. The other way that Jerry's been able to keep them, he pays through the roof for it. Well, he pays more to assistant.
There's no budget for coaching staffs.
Exactly right. Yeah, you're a coordinator in Dallas. You're well compensated. And if you want one quick, and again, Chris will get you in just a second. You want a hot take? I'm not a hot take guy, but I'll give you a hot take right now. So mark this one, Tone. Save this tape. The next head coach of the Houston Texans will be Eagles coordinator Shane Steichen. I think, although Gannon's been down there and impressed them and had 2 interviews last year, and the drum beating will start immediately since they already fired Lovie Smith, which, by the way, another hot take, Lovie, love you. The fact that you subscribe to the Herm Edwards theory of you play to win the game. God bless you, my friend. It probably cost you your job. You're halfway out the door anyway, but that was the last step out the door when you got that 2-point conversion.
I think that was a big middle finger to the Houston Texans on the way out the door.
Agreed.
And I applaud Lovie Smith for that. But I'll tell you why you're wrong with Shane Steichen in Houston. Nick Cesario's a John Carroll guy. They are thick as thieves. Now, Jonathan Gannon isn't a John Carroll guy, but he's thick as thieves with all the John Carroll guys because he's a Cleveland guy. And that's where the connection comes from. Josh McDaniels, By the way, again, the Eagles hired Jonathan Gannon before they hired Nick Sirianni. For people that don't know that, the John Carroll connection runs deep. Maybe Josh McCown, but if not Josh McCown, Jonathan Gannon. I think the Texans were going to hire him last year, but they didn't show the courage. They had a lot of pushback from the league. Because the diversity hiring wasn't up to where the NFL wanted it to be, and they didn't show the courage of their convictions. I think Jonathan Gannon is going to be the new head coach of the Houston Texans.
All right, diversity aside, college buddies aside, what the Houston Texans need is a good offensive mind. They haven't had one in Houston.
That's a fair point.
That's why Steichen gets the job, because their number one pick, which will be number 2, it'll still be a quarterback, needs an offensive guy rather than the defensive guy, and that's why I'm telling you Steichen's going to get the job. All right, quickie timeout. Chris Franklin has been waiting patiently. We appreciate his patience. We appreciate him whenever he comes on the show. We'll punch him up next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post Game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Got Birds 365 here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. John McMullen and Jody McDonald being joined by our buddy from NJ.com, Chris Franklin. All right, Chris, here's where I want to start with you today. As fair and balanced reporters as we are, you are, don't know about me and McMullen, but you certainly are. Give me both sides of the story. The best thing about the Eagles' victory yesterday was blank. The thing that I'm still shaking my head, or I have to admit concern over the Philadelphia Eagles after yesterday's win against the Giants was blank. Fill in the two blanks for me.
I think the best thing for me that I saw was that Jalen Hurts was back on the field. I thought that went a long way, and looking back on now, it's probably best that he got that game out of the way because he can knock some rust off. But for me, the most concerning thing, even with him back, was the red zone offense. I mean, you're 4 for 10 of your last times down there within the red zone, and you had to settle for field goals all those times as well too. I mean, it's nice to have Jake Elliott on your team when he's able to make that. We're going to probably see him on the special teams player of the week. I know kicking field goals.
Ooh,
I mean,
that's right. Tomorrow we may have
could be. I don't know. I don't know.
Mike Gill on. We gotta lock that up because we have too many Eagle Player of the Week announcements on this show.
Yeah.
Good point out of you, Franklin.
Yeah.
Oh,
the 50-yard field goals, Chris, are the new 40-yard field. All these guys are banging 50 yards. It's amazing. It's amazing how good the kickers have gotten in this league. It's 52-yarder. It's like nothing to these guys.
Yeah, we got guys like Justin Tucker who's like in pregame, let me just fool around, kick 68, 70s, and let me just see if I got the leg. All right, I got it. Okay, cool. It's crazy. It's good to know that when you have a reliable one, it helps, but it's not. You don't want to see them often when you have an offense that finished one was for most of the season was in the top 3 when it came to red zone offense, and now you're having trouble executing. You need to fix that very soon before you get to the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting that Nick, after in his post-game press conference, started talking about the red zone troubles as you were, and then I kind of pressed him later, and he's like, "Well, Jalen was fine, but the red zone issues, blah blah blah," and I was like, "Well, wasn't the red zone issues directly related to, taking his ability to pull the football because of his injury off the table? Didn't that equate to the red zone issues? Because to me, that's the whole thing. That's why the Eagles are so good in the red zone, because everybody's so fearful of Jalen pulling it out, taking it, in the back end, and that opens up things in the passing game. It opens up things in the running game. Isn't that the whole thing of the red zone difficulties?
The threat of him running does help with some of that stuff, especially rolling out. But when you have trouble just lining up and saying, hey, you know what, with this offensive line going against their goal line defense, saying, hey, you know what, we can't get 2-3 yards to get in the end zone, or when it comes to the passing off of that. I mean, if I'm a defender in space and the Eagles pull a bootleg out or they run a zone read, whatever, and you have Hurts rolling to his right side and you have bigger targets. When you look at AJ Brown, when you have Dallas Goedert all rolling to the same side, that had an issue. But then I remember looking at some of the tape. I haven't finished it all, but I remember looking at the one tape where there was a play where you had Brown and Smith in the same area, and he had to roll to his left. I think he got sacked or something like that as well too on that play too. So they got some stuff they need to work out on, because say if it's an NFC Championship game, you can't settle for 5 field goals from Jake Elliott if you're playing the 49ers.
And I think to kind of capitalize the game for me was the drive in the fourth quarter. They get it back with 10 minutes to play, and they take 6.5 minutes off the clock. 15-play drive, for all intents and purposes, put the game away there. But then again, settle for a field goal. 71-yard drive, and you only come away with 3 points. That was yesterday's game in a nutshell. Can they win like that in the playoffs? Can they win a 22-21 game against Minnesota or Tampa Bay or whoever they're going to play their first playoff game?
I think they can against a team like Tampa Bay, because I look at that offense and they just seem, I don't know what the heck is going on. It seems like they aged overnight. It's bad. But when you look, even in Minnesota, because I look at Minnesota, when they're outside when they're not playing home and they're on the road, they come back down to earth. But if it's San Fran, nah, they can't. You can't win with that, because they seemingly find ways to win late. And they're a physical team as well too, and they'll meet up with you. So that's why they got to convert at least 2 of those times down in the red zone. If you convert 2 of those touchdowns, then I think we're having a whole different discussion. We're talking about, all right, maybe Hurts should have thrown here. We're talking about that, but that red zone is just they got to fix the button up quickly.
Well, the only two teams the Eagles couldn't play in the divisional round are San Francisco and Minnesota. So, of the 4 other teams, who would be the easiest and who would be the most difficult?
I'd probably say the easiest is Seattle. I think even though Geno Smith has had a heck of a run, this team has looked a lot. It surprised me. I thought they were being. I thought they'd have a top 10 pick. I thought that we look at all the moves they made. I'm like,
the Eagles have a top 10 pick officially.
Yeah, they do officially. Yeah, but it trades and everything else when it comes to that. But I thought I thought merit wise they'd be in the top 10 when it comes there. I think the Cowboys are the toughest team. I think when you look back overall.
Yeah,
I mean, even though the game's here, you look at the way it seemingly Dak plays against this defense, and you wonder how much of that passive zone we'd see. Obviously they better make some changes. If not, Dak might throw for 75% of his passes. But I think the Cowboys are going to be a tough one. I actually don't think I'm not too worried about Tampa Bay right now. I think the Seattle's the one that's the game they when they get that.
If Chris Franklin is right, I think Tampa's going to do the Eagles a favor. I think they're going to go in at home. I think they stay at home and actually take out the Cowboys next week. But we got all week to figure that out. All right. Big Play Slay. Doesn't like us using his first name, so I'll give him at least that much. Well, guess what? You're going back to being Darius next week if you don't pick up your game against whoever they play. John noted yesterday it was a pick six, not a dropped interception, a drop pick six for Big Play Slay. His big play has really dropped off here in the second half. You got any reasons behind that, Franklin?
I think he's banged up. Just the way looking at the way that he's running a little bit for his getting more treatment and stuff like that. I think he's a little banged up right now, and I mean, I know the whole adage
Nate Gary, is that what you're telling me? He's actually playing hurt and they're keeping it on the wrap and they're not saying anything.
I think he might fight you for saying he's Nate Gary instead of saying, he's not Nate Gary anymore. When he came to that one, he might fight you with that one.
You got the context I was putting in. Not overall talent level or accomplishment, just solely playing injured and keeping it under wraps.
You got Chris all choked up.
That'd be great. Yeah. But no, I think looking at it now, I think he's just banged up in the wear and tear. I mean, he's also getting older too. I mean, look at his age. I think he's 32, like that forever. I think it's starting to wear. It's wearing down.
I think it's also just part. He was so good in like the first 8-9 games. You know, you got to come back to earth a little bit. This is the NFL. I mean, it's difficult to play cornerback in the NFL. You can't have a 39 passer rating thrown against you for the entire season when the worst quarterback is like at 72.3. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You know, it's just there's a regression to the mean that had to happen. I think he's still a damn good player. I mean, again, everything's contextual. Look at the corners on other teams. I'll take Slay. Yeah, he missed an interception. Should have had it. No question.
Had that. It's a couple.
No question. And Bradbury's had a tremendous year. It's a shame Avante is injured, but this group of corners is the best one I've seen in Philadelphia for a very, very, very long time.
The Bobby Troy out time. I think it's around there.
Yeah, probably you got to go back to that. And I would argue this group's better. Because Bradbury's played off the charts. Now, Avante, if he was there for 16 games, because he's been banged up twice now, he's missed a lot of time. But when he's out there, he's a difference maker. Look at how he was playing in that Dallas game before he got injured. He was playing great in that game. And all of a sudden he leaves and things fall off the rails. Yeah, I love this quarterback group, especially in this era where it's so easy to throw the football. I don't know how you could expect much more.
All right, so let me put it to both you two guys. take what they had done previously in their career and just wipe it away. It doesn't matter one iota. Rank the 3 Eagle cornerbacks for me this year with their level of play.
I think Darius Slay's one because there's a stretch there where teams didn't even look at it. He almost basically cut the field in half where teams didn't really want to do it. The only time they throw that way was like a wide receiver screen or something like that to try to get him up there and try to make a tackle. That's the only time I think he's one. Bradbury 2, because I thought with that, based off of that, and teams were trying to attack him more, I thought he played well, and not only trying to basically limit the state teams try to test him deep. That's the only thing I worry about. If you get a guy, a real speed guy that like a Tyreek Hill or something like that, trying to match up against him going deep, that's the only time I have a question like what you're going to do with that. And Tyreek Hill, we all know the type of player he is. And then I think Matt is number 3 because I look at what they did, and you can see the game plan against the Cowboys, what they were going to do. They were using him. He's an effective blitzer off the edge. He does very well in the middle of running and containing the thing. They don't think he's good for as a slot corner as opposed to being on the outside. So if I do a Slay, Bradbury, then Maddox overall.
Yeah, I'd go the same way. I mean, Slay, there is something too. Bradbury's played great. I'm not going to go all Bob Groats on you. I love the way Bradbury's played, but there's something to being the number 1 corner, and Bradbury be the first one to tell you. And Slay loves Bradbury too, but he's the great complement to the great corner. Like Darius is, and I use his first name, so he's probably going to hit me, but he's a top 5 corner in this league. He's top 5 corner in this
but
league.
I don't think he played like a top 5 corner this year. I
think
take away what you have previously done.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best seasons he's ever had.
Cornerback 1 in Jonathan Gannon's defense doesn't really hold a whole hell of a lot of water since they play positionally and sit in zone about 80% of the time. So when someone uses the phrase cornerback 1, I think of a guy who you're going to play man-to-man on, to out on an island, not worry about bracketing him and no safety help. That's not Gannon's defense.
First of all, and I'll let you jump in.
Against.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I'll say, you look at the job. I mean, look back to the job he did against Justin Jefferson back in week 2. I think they use the matchup. They'll tell him once. They'll use, depending on the opponent, they'll go sometimes say, hey, Slay, follow this guy around the field the whole entire time, and Bradbury go the other way. But also when you look at the way the scheme works as well, too, when the way it matches up and you don't know where you're going, like wherever guy's going, you don't know if he's got the deep third, even then he's still back there. If he's going to the quarter, he's still going back there. And then you say, oh, yeah, we want you to press and work the underneath. And when a quarterback looks, like you just see quarterbacks in their progression, they look and go, they went, no, and they had to go this way because it wasn't there in time, too. And he gets to jump off. He reads the jumps off wide receivers well too. So I think overall, when you look at it, I think he's played he's played well in that recognition.
Yeah, I think this is one of his best seasons ever. I think it's his best season as an Eagle. I wasn't as close to him in Detroit. I know how good he was in Detroit. I get what Jody's saying, and people think great corners, they think press coverage. In a lot of ways, I think, and I say it all the time, I hate this scheme, but for different reasons than fans. This scheme is so freaking hard to play because there's so much communication involved. And you see it with the other teams. You see busted coverage. You see it here. Fans lose their mind. But the Eagles are the best at it. They've taught it the best. And when they do have a miscommunication, it looks ugly. People often blame the wrong player. Slay is so good at it. Bradbury's so good at it. They're so savvy. They give headaches. A lot of it is zone coverage with man concepts, as you know. Sometimes it's man coverage on one side, zone on the other. It is a very difficult defense for the back 7 as a whole, including TJ and Kaiser. And the Eagles over double-digit teams run this scheme, and nobody runs it better than the Eagles, and that's because of the corners. That's because of the corners. That's because of Slay and Bradbury.
Certainly a key element to the Eagles' success defensively. All right. One of the things they missed out yesterday on was their usual quarterback pressures. They got 2 sacks, neither one of them in the conventional way. A fake punt got him a sack. So it wasn't your usual Eagles pass rushing day. How much of that was because Josh West wasn't in the lineup, Chris?
I think he's I think when you look at it, he's an impact guy that when you use him in there, and I mean the way he's been playing, he's been one of the better edge rushers in the league. I mean, you look at his sack totals, most of them was coming in the second half of the season. And you look at that, you're like, all right, you see that. So I think a little bit of that came into fruition. I was surprised. Like I looked at Robert Quinn yesterday, and I was shocked. I was like, you know what? He put some pressure on there a couple of times, and he made that smart play of when they were trying to do that quarterback throwback. He knew the zone was open, and that he followed them that way too. So, look, that was encouraging. But there's a drop off when you lose a guy like that. It is pressure. He's still a young guy. He still has almost used to the word of high motor. Stay away from that. But he was able to go right at the edge. He's obtaining pressure. So I look at that. I think that was a big loss for him. But I think the good thing for them is that he's going to be back for the playoffs, especially that neck is good enough. I mean, we saw him in the locker room. But we saw him in the locker room. He was in good spirits, and he's looking around. He was healthy enough that he can go eventually by the time the divisional round rolls around. So that was a key thing, I think, as well too. But Evan Neal, he had a bad game.
He struggled. Yeah, he struggled as a rookie. You know what, though? Andrew Thomas, another high draft pick of the Giants. It took him a while, and he's had a very good season. So, I think Evan Neal is going to be a good player down the road, but he has struggled mightily as a rookie. You mentioned that fake. I didn't even know if it was a fake. It was the worst run fake in the history of mankind. I don't know what they were trying to do. I thought it was just a messed up play. So I want to, as a whole, the Giants didn't play anybody, Chris. I mean, they didn't play anybody. It was a joke of a group of players. I know they're NFL players. I shouldn't go that far, but they did not play any of their key players. To me, the most disappointing aspect, we asked you that earlier. To me, the most disappointing aspect was the Eagles had to play their starters the entire game. Now, they got out of it without injury, but do you make a lot out of the fact that they struggled with that group? I mean, it's no Barkley, it's no Lawrence, it's no Williams, it's no Andrew Thomas, it's no Daniel Jones, Adoree Jackson, on and on and on. Everybody. They sat everybody. And Davis Webb is not an NFL quarterback. I'm sorry. I said Davis Webb. I always say Davis Mills. Davis Webb. Not an NFL quarterback. Now, it was 19-0. If they intercepted the easy interceptions, it probably would have been the blowout. Are you a little concerned how they struggled with these players?
I think the only thing is I thought they used a lot of vanilla stuff on both sides, especially defensively. Like they weren't using they weren't using a lot of the exotic stuff that they've done in the past. So that way I'm not overly concerned when it comes to there. I thought they gave the thing I would be saying I was concerned with is the way they didn't get the Giants off the field a couple times on third down defense, which has lingered throughout this whole second half. And that's a huge concern for me because if you let Davis Webb find the open receiver on like third and 9, when you actually do get the stops on first and second down, then what are you going to do when you see some of the better quarterbacks in the league coming up here in the postseason? So I'm not too overly concerned. Now, if they were throwing out all their exotic whatever, even though the Eagles do finish in the middle of the pack when it comes to blitzes, they're throwing out exotic blitzes and they're throwing out exotic coverages, and they truly game plan for Davis Webb, and he was just still finding it hitting in the open areas of the zone. Then I'm like, they're in serious trouble. But looking as he went vanilla on both sides of the ball, I'm not too overly concerned yet.
Chris, you said the facing the quarterbacks coming up in the playoffs. Well, the Super Bowl would be the playoffs too. It would be a nice spot to be in the playoffs. But what quarterback are you afraid of in the NFC that the Eagles are going to have to face here?
I think they're still even though I said earlier when it came to the Tampa Bay offense not being it is, Brady's done it in the past. You still don't want to give the ball if it's a close game like that. I still don't want to give the ball to him with 2 minutes to go in the game. I look at Dak just by basically the history of that, and there's something about Shanahan, what he does with guys. He gets the most out of guys like Garoppolo, and you see what he's doing right now at Brock Purdy. I think it's just the window dressing that the 49ers have, where they run those jet sweeps. They basically like, hey, look over here. Oh, there's a wide receiver going to bind, and they run out the backside there. So I look at that.
We're going to hear a lot about if it's 49ers Eagles in the championship game. We're going to hear a lot about eye discipline that week.
Yep,
a lot about eye discipline because
it's like the wing tee in a way. It really feels like you're watching wing tee football, but it's the pro style version of it in a way. But I think those are the 3 quarterbacks right now. I'm like, they give a little trepidation right now for his defense.
Boy, I can't. Jody and I talked about it. I can't be fearful of Brock Purdy. I want Brock Purdy. I want to be the shoe.
Brock Purdy disrespect.
I want to be the shoe that drops on that head. If I'm a defense, I embrace that challenge. I'm like, you know what? F this. This is freaking Brock Purdy. We're going to shut this shit down. That's how I would approach it if I'm a defensive player. I really would. I would take it as, man, we're going to show the world that, midnight is striking for this guy.
I'm going to paraphrase a Rocky 3 quote, Rocky 2 quote. He took his way back from being Mr. Irrelevant, and he just kept coming. You don't need that man in your life.
Hey, man.
Let him
you
go.
Take it both ways. Take it both ways. I'm sure Kyle's using that as well. But my only point is, look, Dak Prescott, we know the game he had yesterday. Kirk Cousins, we know the game he had in Philadelphia earlier this season. Those are good quarterbacks. Now, they're not Patrick Mahomes and they're not Joe Burrow, but they're good quarterbacks. I can't bring myself to say they're not more of a concern than Brock Purdy. San Francisco as a whole is more of a concern because they have the better supporting cast. They have the better coach. But just the position, I mean, those guys are better. Is anybody going to disagree with that?
No,
but I think he gets the ball to the right guys and he gets it quickly out, and that's where I think makes the whole thing go. And that's what concerns me with him. That's it.
I think the quarterback you should be most fearful of, believe it or not, is Kirk Cousins. Now, the Vikings I'm not fearful of because their defense just flat out stinks.
Oh, it stinks.
I think if you get into a shootout, even a recovering Jalen Hurts, I'm going to take him to be able to outscore Kirk Cousins. But if you're just talking about solely the position, not the team, I think Kirk Cousins is the quarterback.
Yeah, he makes some throws, man. He makes some of the most difficult throws and on-target throws. You know, him and Jared Goff as well makes those throws. And for whatever reason, they haven't had great supporting cast. Jared went to the Super Bowl and everybody acted like he was incompetent. I mean, he makes some of the tightest window throws outside of Aaron Rodgers in his prime, but for whatever reason, people don't. Kirk's the same way. Some of those throws down the field to Jefferson, I mean, they're dimes. Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't. Brock Purdy can't do that. But the supporting cast is tremendous in San Francisco. I picked him to go to the Super Bowl. Supporting cast is tremendous.
To go full circle back to when John and I started the show, it's funny because I was going to go there and John went there before I even got him there. If you were to rank the quarterbacks that are in the postseason right now, we ran through the NFC guys. I take Trevor Lawrence over any of them. I take Joe Burrow over any of them. I take Patrick Mahomes over any of them. I take Josh Allen over any of them. It's not even close between the AFC quarterbacks and the NFC quarterbacks. There is a massive drop-off. Just the quarterback position we're talking about. I just said Kirk Cousins is the quarterback that the Eagles should be most afraid of. Oh, he'd be sixth on the list if you put all the AFC teams in there.
Well, I would only say I agree with you, Jody, and I'll get Chris your thought on this. Like long term, I'd agree with you on Trevor Lawrence, but right now, I would take Dak
next
and
week.
Kirk.
I'm just talking next week.
Next week, I'd take Dak and Kirk over Trevor Lawrence, not over Mahomes and Burrow and Herbert and Josh Allen. Who'd I miss? The top four. But right now, and 2 years from now, yeah, I'm with you. Trevor, way more. But right now, I'd say Dak and Kirk are better than him. It's still early in that process. Doug is doing a tremendous job with him, though.
If you give Trevor Lawrence, Jefferson, and put Kirk Cousins on that Jaguar squad, and Christian Kirk's had a nice year, but I think
one thing I know about Kirk
Cousins is doing.
One thing he might not win at night, but one thing I know about Kirk, he's putting up freaking numbers. He's putting up numbers. He put up numbers with Christian Kirk. Trust me. Look at that guy. 4,000 yards year after year after year after year after year. Touchdowns. You know, I'll say this, and if you want to look up his numbers, look up his numbers. If by some magic of God, lightning strikes, and he has the Nick Foles run, people are going to start talking about him as a Hall of Famer because his stinking numbers are so impressive. Watch. It's not going to happen. But his numbers, I encourage you both to look up his numbers after we get up this show. They're outrageous. Year after year after year after year. And that's why, by the way, I'm not a numbers guy, because it doesn't tell you the whole story.
We'll see how much they really want him in the Hall of Fame when they actually decide what time that game is. Because if it's something in the afternoon,
yeah, exactly. Put it at 1 o'clock. He's got a chance. Put it at 1 o'clock. Unfortunately, the NFC Championships game is not going to be at 1 o'clock, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, so Kurt's in trouble. Always a pleasure, Stud. Appreciate you coming on, Chris. We'll have you on again next week, even though Chris always comes on after a game. There is no game next week. We still count on you, Franklin.
No. NJCot.com, by the way. Read Chris at C Franklin News. I gotta.
I promise I won't be hungover or anything like that from sleeping off and enjoying the time off. And I'll be good. I'll be here.
You should get hungover.
Drinking watching the other NFC playoff games to find out who the Eagles play. But it'll be up with us.
There's still work to do. Yes. There's still work to do.
Good stuff. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks. Y'all have a good one now. See you.
Chris Franklin, NJ.com, here with us on Birds 365. All right, running a little late. We'll come back. We'll put a bow on the show. We're counting down to Eagles playoffs here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Coming back to wrap up this episode of Works 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Oh, you're going to get more football, Sarah telling next, sports take, right into the National Football Show this afternoon, and then we'll be back here again tomorrow. All right, Johnny Max, what's your sked look like going forward today? You got the coach, and then you think you're getting a couple days off?
No coach today. The coach is not going till tomorrow.
He's holding off till Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah, holding off till Tuesday. I'm going to do the Mike Missinelli podcast, so I still got a long day. But for this week, I think the players are going to be in Wednesday and Thursday. Still waiting for the schedule, obviously. I'll get that later today. Then I'll have off the weekend. It's interesting. You mentioned before, like, what do? You have 4 potential opponents. So it's like a bye week. It's like self-scout, fix your own stuff. Now,
yeah, but at least a bye week, you know who the next team is. It's up on your schedule.
Yeah. But, I mean, generally, bye week, they don't prep for that team. You know, sometimes you have some of the quality control coaches, but you're really working on sort of your self-scout and what you do. Most teams, and not everybody's the complete same, but most teams do it that way. In this case, you do know coming off, but you don't generally start that much earlier. They'll have some quality control guys. They know the Cowboys and Giants really well. They know them like the back of their hand. So they'll probably have those guys looking a little bit more at Seattle and Tampa Bay and Case. And then, it's like, then you get in a prep for the game once you know your opponent, and that's how the Eagles will handle it. And they're in a very good position. Because I don't see any of these teams outside of San Francisco that even have a chance to come into Philadelphia and beat this team.
If I tell you that on Sunday afternoon, Jonathan Gannon is having coffee with a guy with the last name of Mack, will it be more likely McNair or McMullen?
McNair. Actually, McMullen, because you can interview, but only virtually during the bye week. So teams that are in the playoffs can only interview virtually. So he can't do any in-person meetings. But I do expect Houston to talk to him again, although they know everything they need to know, to be honest. And we'll see how they go. Obviously, they're looking for another coach. By the way, if Jonathan thinks he has other options, remember Denver interviewed him last year, Minnesota. If he thinks he has other options, he might not want that disaster of an organization. Who knows how things shake out.
Love you, Lovey. God bless you. Play to win the game. You opened up a
big middle finger on the way out the door. Good for you, Lovey. I cheered when that happened, by the way, paying attention in the press box. Good for him. Good for him.
So did I. I gave him a big time nod for it. He got game ball for me on CBS Sports Radio last night. All right, J-Mac, I will see you in the morning. We'll be back here in 2 and 2. Cool?
Let's do it.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.